Hey, Steady Steve, please like and subscribe. Please click on the Deck Heroes icon, click on subscribe, 100% free. Blood in, blood out. Okay, brilliant. So this video coming up is a very kind gentleman who's going to do something to help the homeless. And yeah, just the homeless mainly. You know, I was going to say those who are the disadvantaged really, but I haven't watched the whole video, but the bit I've seen looks like homeless to me, basically. Who are the homeless generally, and not exclusively, but generally? It's going to be the men. Why the men? I work in homelessness. I worked in homelessness for over 10 years. At senior levels now, these days. I'm going up in the world. Long story short, I was always going to think about what kind of project can I get behind in order to try and tackle these things. But anyway, that's to come. I may well do a GoFundMe. I'm not at that stage yet. It's just pipe dream at the moment. But I work in homelessness. So anyway, who are the people who tend to be the rough sleepers, the people who sleep rough on the streets? Tends to be men. Why? Because in a relationship breakdown, they'll either just take it on themselves to leave, or if any accusations are made, who is expected to leave? It's going to be the men. How many people have, I don't know, 3 or 4 months rent saved up just for a rainy day in case, I don't know, a relationship breaks down or you lose your job or anything like that? Hardly anybody. That's another reason in general on both sides, for both sexes, basically, about why people can be homeless. And there's going to be a million. I ain't going to be able to cover everything, but that's a few of the reasons. But yeah, if you've got kids, you will not be made homeless because somebody's got to look after the kids traditionally and via the courts or whatever way, whatever the process is. Who are the people who generally look after the kids? It's not the men. And there could be other reasons as well. The main drivers of homelessness, obviously drugs and alcohol, lack of life skills, just having back-to-back bad luck. I did mention about not having money saved up, but say if you lose your job and then you get hit with a bill and then something else happens, people can just be unlucky. Let's see what this person's going to do. Very interesting video. Let's go.
How much for the burger?
$8.
Could I get 20 burgers?
Okay.
Thank you so much.
That's amazing. I'm here all the time. I never heard anybody order 20 burgers before.
We're gonna feed some homeless people.
Where do you do that?
St. Paul.
Wow, that's amazing. I'd love to help you out if I could. Could I get another 50? I'd like to make a difference.
Really?
I would love to partake if you'd have me.
What's your name?
I'm Denny Walsh. I'm the mayor of Orono, and I love giving back.
Well, thank you so much. Is that all the food?
That is amazing. I'll take care of this.
No,
I
not all
like giving
70.
back. Put this on my bill. Thank you.
What can I do for you?
Can I go with you?
Serious?
Absolutely. I'd love to go with you and do it firsthand.
All right, let's do it. You can meet the people down there.
Thank you. Then water back there. Got water back there. Thank you. All right. There you go. Absolutely. Get some water down there too.
Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
Bless you, man.
Bless you too, man. For you.
Good too. Love it. Thanks, one free. All right. Then get some water too. Absolutely. And there's some water right behind you.
I'm doing better now.
Yeah.
Thank you, y'all.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you so
Yeah, it's a nice sentiment. The primary homeless charity in the UK, the last I heard, I don't speak for them, but the last I heard, they don't recommend giving homeless people money. I think part of the reason for that, so I've just had a more kind of general kind of open conversation about homelessness right now, and I say it doesn't apply to everybody. It does not apply to everybody. But the advice given from, I say, the shelter charity, the last I heard, and I don't, I'm not on the pulse of shelter, was they would advise that you, instead of giving them money, you can give them things in kind. You know what I mean? Like what they're doing, the food and the water. Giving them money, as to say, if drug and alcohol, if it is, and that's not necessarily going to be everybody, but if it is, then giving them money would be a destabilizing thing. Did you know, you already know in advance where that money is likely to go? And that might have been one of the primary drivers of homelessness, in the first place, which brought about homelessness. And as I say, until they get a handle on those main causes of homelessness, or the thing that was just stopping and breaking that cycle, then they'll always be trapped in that loop. So maybe the first step for them, it can go down 2 ways. It's either going to be accommodation and then drug and alcohol support. I'm talking about that specific scenario of drug and alcohol being the main driver of homelessness. Or they try and tackle that drug and alcohol first, and as they get more stable, then they'll be more kind of tenancy ready for to kind of sustain accommodation. Because the other problem is, if you put that person who is on hard drugs amongst the general population, then you've immediately, say if it's the hardest of drugs, then you've immediately got like a crack house. If you've got a crack house next door to where you live, that's not normally desirable, and there may rather be other friends of the same cohort, which kind of create antisocial behaviour. This is not a drill, this is fact, and that does actually happen. It does actually happen in the Housing First model. I'm not going to get into any kind of details about that, but that could also be one of the problems. So, long story short, you need to identify. Anyway, with all those things considered, what could I possibly do? Because the other thing is as well, even if I did have the money to do something, you need something that's going to bring about that transformative change. Somebody needs to kind of say, identify those main drivers of homelessness. But you also need to build a relationship so they actually want to listen to you at all. Which means you need to have that kind of personal kind of characteristics that people can, not empathise you, kind of relate to you and know your true intentions. And it's kind of bizarre how things kind of work in some ways. Kind of is bizarre and kind of isn't, in as much as if they like, it's like having the best teacher in the world. If they like you, then they're more likely to listen to you, and they'll do it for their own reasons, but they also do it because they don't want to let you down. You know what I mean? And it's just about how you can relate to people and how much trust they have in you, how much faith they have in you, and whether you're talking sense and whether they believe that you're doing things with their best intentions and you're just clear. And so they need to be at the right stage, at the right time in their lives, which is say, if that's not giving them money, which finances habits, which kind of keeps them back and is threatening their health and their life and their housing. You know what I mean? So, and that can become, I was going to go into some of the problems with the UK system, because the more that you kind of do all the drugs and the diminished health and exposure to the elements, the more ill that you get, the more benefits that you'll get, right? The different types of benefits, but you need more income to support, ill health, basically. The more income that you get, if you haven't overcome the drugs and alcohol, you're accelerating how more ill that you get, and that finishing line is meeting the Grand Reaper, you know what I mean? So it's just really kind of a sad situation where you need to kind of step in and break that cycle. There is a theory in the UK that I'm actually going to touch on something I wasn't going to touch on. That is why the current theory in the UK, which is presiding about accommodation first, is in some ways broken. And I think there's a political kind of ideology about kind of like sweep up the problem. You know what I mean? And I think to the layperson, they think that, okay, well, if somebody's homeless, we'll obviously give them a house. But I think you read a bit deeper, and the advice is not to only give them a house, is to give them suitable housing, right? So if somebody has drug and alcohol needs, suitable housing is going to be somewhere where they don't have a fixed tenancy. It's going to be somewhere where they have what's called a license. A license is somewhere where they don't have tenancy rights, and you can actually impose some barriers, you know what I mean? So you can ask them to leave if necessary. And the only way it's going to happen is not going to be that kind of linear, straight path like it is for the generic person. If you're in drug and alcohol and you've led a chaotic lifestyle, of course it's not going to be linear. And you need to have some boundaries, otherwise you've got no boundaries. And the boundaries are designed to get them past that drug and alcohol stage so they're actually ready to not only sustain a tenancy but move on with their lives. So all that kind of things considered, if you just put somebody straight into a tenancy, then they don't have to listen. This kind of tenancy first mindset, just put them straight into a tenancy, then they don't have to listen to you. They don't have any boundaries. Now they've got a house, which is probably going to be a crack house, if they're into that type of thing. I say the hard drugs, that's the example that I'm using. And there's nobody to monitor them. There's nobody to kind of rein them back, to save their life, to save their health. And again, they still go down that track where their health gets lower, their benefits will get higher. The more money they've got on benefits, the more they can spend on drugs, which means it's just it's sad. They say their health would just plummet, and as I say, that's part of the reason. It's not going to be the entire reason why the life expectancy for the homeless and former rough sleepers is low, but it's going to be something along those lines. But also there's a high rate of taking one's own life as well, which can be related to like many factors, and it can come very unexpected. And I've done a video not on rough sleepers but on something very similar, and yeah, it's always sad. It's always hard to take, and usually it comes at the most surprising kind of times when someone's got the whole life together. And yeah, anyway, so yeah, I touched on a bit more than I was intended to. I touched on the whole principles of housing first, the dominant solutions to try and deal with rough sleeping in the UK and its problems, but how it can be solved. Just following on a little bit more from what I said. So if you give them that license that I talked about with the barriers where they don't have their tenancy rights, really what I'm talking about is a hostel with on-site support. May not be 24 hours, but at least some of the time. And the time when there's not on-site support, there's going to be security, right? That's what the usual model is. But how many of those facilities can realistically be built? Especially I'm in London. How many of those facilities can realistically be built? Potentially as many as what you need, but do you have the finances to kind of fulfill the endless needs? Effectively, you're guaranteeing accommodation for those who happen to be rough sleepers and subject to drug and alcohol. Does that mean that somebody who's not into drug and alcohol, or not affected by drug and alcohol, but happens to be a rough sleeper, has to get into drug and alcohol in order to get the accommodation, in order that they can move on? That's kind of a perverse way of looking at it, but there'll be some people who think, okay, I think they're incentivizing getting really ill. But I say I kind of took myself into a pigeonhole there, but and that'll be the last time. I'm not pretending to kind of give answers to every kind of niche either. So I think that's the only thing I'm going to say about that example. For the greater good, for the vast majority, yeah, they need to kind of have access to a source of accommodation with on-site support, which is very kind of dynamic and forward-thinking, and as I say, has those kind of personal qualities of staff where the rough sleepers can believe in them and build that relationship, and say build the relationship to build those life skills of budgeting, giving something to budget for, whether it's some kind of token service charge, and for that token service charge you can spend it on anything that you want. You know what I mean? If they get the first meal of the day, or, you know, they get like sandwiches in the morning, or just, you know, sandwiches and a drink, something which makes it worthwhile. It's all going to be subsidised maybe from other things, but this incentivises them for a token amount to start budgeting and start being responsible for paying bills, that type of thing. Being responsible for their room so it's not like a mess. And you believe me, I've seen many examples, and I do believe in that kind of tidy house, tidy mind. Getting them kind of doing anything productive in their daytime, no matter what it is, as long as it's positive and productive, even if it's just going for a run every day. You know what I mean? Or kind of doing some gardening, or doing some volunteering, or whatever it is, just trying to do things productive, because idle hands, as the saying goes, you know what I mean? As it, you know, you find bad things to do if you've got idle time all the time. I definitely believe in that. So bringing it back to what would I do if I did a GoFundMe? And there are charities that do something similar, like the St. Mungos. And I think if anybody did have any kind of spare cash, I would advise to send it to the St. Mungos of the world and the shelters of the world. Definitely, those are established charities which help the homeless. But if I was going to do it myself, if I was going to do it, obviously I'll document it. You know what I mean? And I say I would. No, well, document it in terms of video. It's anybody that would have invested. And it's just concept at this point in time. the rough sleepers I know that really have turned their lives around, as I say, I think it would be some kind of befriending service, and there are befriending services out there. But again, it really does start off with that accommodation, having the right type of accommodation and the kind of input and support that they provide. That's the true answer. And I haven't got the money for that. We'll be talking, oh my gosh, buying a premises in London. Councils do that anyway. But if I was going to do it for myself and a GoFundMe, then, oh my gosh, it'd be astronomical. Astronomical. It'd be like, I need $500,000, something like that. Because you've got to buy a premises and then you need to fit it out. Probably even more than that. And then you need to recruit the staff. They need to be on site, and then, you know, you can invite people down and the council would fill it. I could definitely do that. That's not where my thoughts are. I was thinking about something more token. Don't worry. It's just really tough, long story short. And they're very distrusting of people who kind of befriend them that they don't know. And you got to imagine, if you're on the streets all day, every day, you don't really know who to trust, and you can't just shut the door to kind of keep away people that may want to cause you harm. And yeah, you just have to be more cautious. So what could I do? What could I do? What could I do? What could I do? I think, I mean, I work in my sleeping. I think it was St. Mungo sponsored one of the guys to just do lots. He's doing some, he's ready, you know what I mean? And they sent him on some kind of construction course and made sure that was financed. And they sent him on some just productive things to do. He's into kind of like, groups where you can talk about things. They don't necessarily charge. There's lots of those in London. But also just to fill the day, he went on tour of, you know, some of the attractions in London. And I think to be honest, financing any positive pastime just to get them away from things. And from that, you could build a relationship, and you just don't know where it's going to go. So if you could kind of maybe get a former rough sleeper or somebody who's ready to move on, and then finance that person to befriend other rough sleepers. It's kind of like paying it forwards. And then you kind of get to know that person. And then if they come back to you or if I had a pot of money and said, okay, yeah, this is what he wants to do. And I'll get him there. I'll help get him there. And then you kind of do that so many times, and from building that relationship, you see where that kind of goes. And for some people, then that's not necessarily going to lead to destination, but in others that it will. But as long as you move forward with it, and you can maybe the goal, but the primary goal, as I'm thinking while talking, maybe will be that you get them engaged just so they can be referred to other sources of support. I was going to say, it's not everybody that gets to go with this St. Mungo's thing that I mentioned before, because that person was helped because they were long-term identified rough sleeper, right? So that's where that money comes from. That's not going to apply to everybody, and we don't want everybody to reach that point. But I think that pay it forward is what I'm really thinking, where whilst they're on their journey and helping themselves, they can befriend others and get them both on there, and no matter what it is, even if it's, I don't know, watching the football. You know what I mean? And okay, we've got to go to that. Okay, well, we've got to invest with these guys. We've got to stick with these guys if you want to go to it then. You know what I mean? And that's, if they get something from it, and I say you do enough positive things day to day, and that can be transformative. So, listen, if there's any donors out there, it's only at concept stage right now. This isn't where the bulk of my channel is going to be. I might actually talk on other homeless kind of perspectives, or homeless kind of theoretical debates or policy that's kind of put out there. Maybe not, I'm not too sure. But I understand everything about the legislation. I worked in, let's say, homelessness for over a decade now, and with lots of success. But anyway, I do like this kind of kindness type video where people try to give back, and if that was some, we call it a food bank in the UK. If that was a food bank where, you know, people are going there because they don't have enough money to get the basic provisions, then obviously go in there with some kind of high-end burgers. Doesn't have to be a high-end burger, but a high-end burger would be noted is a very nice gesture. It doesn't try to, it's that kind of, you want to teach them how to fish, not give them the fish though. That's what I'm talking about. And even in my suggestion, I say it's paying it forwards. And I say, if you do enough positive things day to day, then it can kind of encourage you to get your life back together. And I've seen it so many times, just as a concept. Anyway, please like, subscribe. I want to try and find some more kind of homelessy type videos, which are upbeat and kind of going to move things forwards in a constructive way. Anyway, please like, subscribe, and switch on notifications. That is Steve, and I am out.